So good morning, everyone, and thank you for being in this important workshop. I know we are competing against the netting one, so it looks like we have to go out there and bring some more people, but hope more will be joining us. So one of the main topics of this convention is sustainability, and more than sustainability is how to become an industry, a sustainable industry. Yesterday we had an amazing presentation of Lucas Simon. He brought us a lot of ideas. He brought a benchmark on how the industry how other industries have been working and developing the process of being sustainable. Also a roadmap on how is the path to become an industry, a sustainable industry. And the good news is that he told us that we are in the right way, in the right path. So that's a good beginning. And the important thing is that we are in the baby step process, and this carbon footprint measure is also one of these baby steps. As you may know, FIDI started 2 years ago. The coalition is one of the founders of the coalition of a greener mobility initiative, and the main task of this coalition is to become this industry sustainable. And in 2023, the first task was to educate. So last convention we were educating, and Magali started to create best practices, and we create also like the recipe to how a green mobility has to be. 2024 now is the next step, is to know where we are in order to know where we should go. And for that, we partnered with the team of Worldfavor, with Emma and Mai, to develop this specific tool for this specific industry in order to standardize all the processes between the big, the small, and the mid-sized companies. We are really surprised on the results, on how the companies that has been trying it, the feedback that we have been receiving it from all the partners has been really fantastic. So I want to thank Magali for lead for the last 2 years the sustainability program. She's the manager of the sustainability project, and she knows, and I know, and everyone knows, and the FIDI board knows that this is a very long journey. I don't know if we're going to be in 2050, if that's the goal and the vision that we're going to be, but I hope so, close. Also want to thanks to the committee experts that have been working with Magali for the last 8 months, 9 months. The companies that have been trying the system and the carbon footprint for the last 5 months. I don't know if some of these companies are here. There were more than 40 companies that helped to develop this project, and well, especially thanks to Worldfavor, to Emma and Mai, for also take the journey to learn our industry and to be ready to help us to start, as we were talking today in the morning, these baby steps. So you are now a key factor on this process. So thank you, and Magali, all yours, and welcome.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sebastian. And hello, everyone. Can you hear me? Yes, perfect. And thank you, Sebastian. We're so excited to be part of this industry and to be in this partnership with FIDI. It's been an amazing journey so far, and we see a lot of opportunities going forward ahead. And we want to talk about what we have done and what we're going to do today. So the aim is, of course, to help you in your industry to make your sustainable business processes more easy to work with, to get the insights that you need, to understand where you are, to be able to set your goals, to be able to change, to be able to work together as an industry. So we're going to go into the nitty-gritty of that. And just for proper introductions, for the ones that haven't met us, I know I see some familiar faces from the conference that I've talked to a lot, but my name is Emma, and I've been at Worldfavor for 2 years, this week actually.
Woo!
Yes. So I come from a marketing and communications background, but when I saw what Worldfavor was doing, I just had to change lanes, going into the area of sustainability, and have been the main point of contact together with Magali, pushing this project from Worldfavor's perspective. But not without my sidekick me, of course.
So my or me in Swedish, but my is fine. I know that's a sort of debate whenever someone meets me. I'm like, are you sure? My? Yes, my. And I came in 6 months into the project, so they had already starting to work with sort of very good things. But I was fortunate enough to be part of this project, and it's been very exciting. I've been at Worldfavor now for more than a year, but not 2 years yet, but came from a SaaS industry background and also saw what Worldfavor was doing, and I have to be part of this because this is a passion of mine from private, so very excited to be talking to you today. And also, we are doing a workshop tomorrow again. It's the same subject, so just so that you know, but if you miss anything today and want to revise what you learned today, come back tomorrow again, because it's going to be equally as good.
Yes, and if you have colleagues that couldn't join today,
send them in tomorrow.
Send them our way tomorrow.
Yes.
Because there will be another knitting session as well, but then that's not interesting enough.
It's only whiskey drinking on the other part of the agenda, so. But actually, in terms of what Sebastian was saying, I wanted to check with you guys before we get started how many of you attended the keynote session yesterday. Lucas, Simon, a lot of hands. Nice.
Good.
Nice to see.
Good.
And did any of you feel like you have actually the possibility to change some ways of how you're doing your operations for a more sustainable approach? Hands up. Good.
Good.
And how many of you know where to start? A few. Great. So
hopefully a few more after today.
But then we're on the right path here, and that's why we're here as well, to help you get those keys of where to start. I wanted to give you a bit of a background about Worldfavor as a company, just to get the knowledge and understanding of why we're in this partnership, our joint vision. So basically, we're a Swedish-based company founded in Stockholm, 2016. And what we offer our clients and companies around the world is a global ESG platform. So this platform is created to be able to share your sustainability information with other companies and with your own internal stakeholders as well. So for those of you who are new to sustainability, ESG, it stands for environmental, social, and governance. So these are sort of defining the key areas of sustainability. And as you might be aware, we're going to talk about climate a lot today, so going into the environmental process of how do you calculate your emissions and where to start. But the way that we at Worldfavor help companies doing this is providing them with a platform which you could almost call a network of sustainability data between companies. So if you're reporting your sustainability information within our platform, you can share it with FIDI to be able to help the industry get those insights that you need, but you can also share it with other stakeholders. So it's really about lowering the threshold of having to share a lot of the same information with a lot of different stakeholders, clients, suppliers, and so on. So we're putting a lot of emphasis on enabling that type of knowledge and data sharing within our platform. And I would say, and Magali, correct me if I'm wrong, this is one of the key sort of fundamental aspects of why we went into this partnership, because we want to lower the hurdle of working with sustainability, being able to share it with many, being able to get the insights, and this is what we're aiming to do, right? So we're just kicking off, and we'll keep on working together going forward. So what are then the synergies for the global mobility industries? So as I mentioned, what we're focusing on now in the first phase is really about providing you with the tools and the knowledge to know where to start, so that you can actually start measuring and sharing this information. I know there's a lot of you out there that have gotten different types of requests from different areas within your industries, so that you have that safely gathered in the platform, but also being able to download it to make it easy to access for others. And how are we doing this? Yes, we have developed this tool for you. It's amazing. We're going to look at it. And we want to simplify your carbon calculations. So this can seem overwhelming if you haven't done it, but actually the calculations is not the hard part. It's what comes before, what we're doing right now, starting this conversation together with everyone and gathering the right information, the foundation to use for your calculations. Do you want to add a bit on FIDI's perspective?
Yeah, I think that the idea, so the purpose of this tool really the first one was to take the sting out of the very difficult part that is understanding carbon accounting, because it is very, very complex. And you don't need to all become specialists in the emission factors and the GHG protocol or that. We have done that work for you so that there is a tool that you know is scientifically strong, so that you can focus on what you need to do, which is equally hard, if not harder, which is finding the data, collecting the data, checking that the data is correct, and then inputting that data into the tool, and then using the results for your reporting. We can't do that for you, that's your job. But we have tried that with this tool. The difficult part of understanding the actual calculations, that's done. And I think what's important as well to note is that one difficult task that we tried to solve with what we did is to find the balance between making it as easy as possible to use so that even those that have no idea of carbon calculation can already use it, and granularity and the detail of the data that you actually get out of it, so that those that actually need to have strong reporting or detailed reporting can still use the tool. It wasn't easy. It's still not easy. I think we found a sweet spot, which we will be fine-tuning while we see when the users get to a point where they know a bit more, then we can actually go into more detail. To what you said at one point, it still is very, very complex, because we needed to be able to cover as many activities that are relevant for our industry and for your companies without overwhelming you with lines and lines and lines of data. It is still complex, but then carbon accounting is really, 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 really complicated. So we try to make it as easy as possible. And we put a lot of effort into everything that goes around the calculator, which is the education and the knowledge hub. So there's a huge, huge website, actually, yes, where we go into detail, where we explain what does Scope 1, Scope 2, Scope 3 means for our industry. What does it mean for moving industry? What does it mean if you do DSP activities? What data do you need to find? Where can you find it? How do you need to collect it so that it makes sense? So there's this massive wealth of information that you need to understand before being able to actually use the tool properly. What I often use as an example, I don't know if you have teenagers at home? I have. Have you had to buy the fancy trigonometry, I don't know what, calculate? Well, this tool isn't that. This tool is the very simple calculator that you have on your phone where you can make very, very simple calculations. Because when I look at the trigonometry calculator of my son, I've got no idea how to switch it on. So that was this balance that we needed to find between ease of use and granularity of the data. So with our tool, you won't be able to do trigonometry in carbon accounting. Maybe in a few years, when we all become really, really good at it, then we can go up that level. For now, no, because we believe that our industry is not there yet. The knowledge is not there yet. So to be able to bring everybody to that level, we need to start simple. So that's just, I'm very good at keeping expectations very, very realistic. You will hear that afterwards as well. But that's very, very important to keep in mind as well.
And I think also adding on to that, there's no company in the world, in any industry, that has the exact numbers of their emissions, because there isn't a standard. And we've talked about this so much. It's not an exact science, so you have to do what you can. You have to start somewhere, and then you will, navigate down, and you will make it more granular as you go along. But if you're not starting, and looking back to what Lucas Simon said yesterday, if you don't measure anything, you don't know the impact, and then you don't know how to work together as an industry to change the ways of working. So that is the stepping stone that we are at right now, and trying to get the knowledge out to the industry as well, to be able to do it.
Yeah, which is actually the second purpose of the tool. So the first purpose was to make your life easier. The second purpose of the tool is to drive this standardization, the standardized approach to carbon measurement throughout our industry. Because what we're seeing at the moment, that there are loads of calculators out there, there are loads of companies who have come up with fantastic tools, but actually the results that come out of each single solution is not comparable because the methodology in the back is not the same. So actually the results are not really useful at industry level because, for example, your corporate client that receives 3 different reports won't be able to compare them because in the back, the way it was calculated is not the same. So that's why we said, okay, we need to find a way that makes sense to all of us and drive the standardization. And that's also why, for example, we have decided, so a little bit of carbon accountancy theory here, we're using the DEFRA emission factors as a source because those are open source. They're available openly. Now, they're not perfect, but they are recognized at international level as one of the recognized scientific sources. We have decided to make that big Excel file with all the lines of emission factors, we've decided to make that publicly available. So that anybody who says, okay, I don't want to use that calculation tool for whatever reason, they can take the source file and go to their service provider and say, make sure that whatever results we get out of here is comparable with this one, so that, again, we can start having a single baseline of the data, because otherwise the next steps don't make any sense.
Yes, and I think that takes us to like what is actually included in this partnership. So just to make it very, very clear for everyone here, it is a calculation tool, and as Magali was saying, it is not solving all the problems for you, but it helps you to do the calculation. So we've done the grunt work, we've put in the effort, we've found the emission factors, we've looked at different metrics from the UK to the US to the metric system. So everything is there for you to be able to use it. But it is a calculator, so it's not a reporting tool in that sense. But what you do get is that you get a management solution for your data. So you will be able to put in your total emissions in the different areas that you are calculating within the Worldfavor platform, as I mentioned before, to be able to share it with stakeholders, with FIDI. You can download it from there, obviously, of course, to share it outside of the platform, but making sure that you can store the information so that you can see your progress over time as well. And going back to it, when we get even more granular on the calculations, you can actually recalculate it. So this is what we have to work with now, but it's not a reporting tool as of right now that will push out the PDF and a report to put on your website. That's a job you still have to do on your own, but we are here to support you with that type of templates and information and knowledge sharing if you would like, of course. And that takes us to our last point, that this extensive knowledge hub that Magali was saying and sharing about, we put a lot of effort into that, and this is where it all starts. You have to know what you're doing, why you're doing it, what does it mean, and we've tried to also put it on like a barrier that isn't that high, because of course I understand that everyone here are not ESG experts or sustainability experts, but you can still work with this information and understand what you're doing and where you're going and what kind of data that you need to collect to be able to use this tool. So this is what is included, and we will go into the details of what it means very shortly. But before we do that, I want to take the opportunity as well, talking about a few key business drivers, why you should do this. I think this is crucial to understand why you should put focus, time, spend money, put resources on it. What does it mean for your business, actually? So one thing that we at Worldfavor know, having to work in this industry with managing data collection for almost 10 years now, transparency and engagement drives business. And I think it was a question from the audience yesterday at the keynote session about, well, how do we work towards our consumers? How do we get them to choose a green move? And I think that's really interesting that maybe those aren't the ones that will make the biggest change first off. Maybe the business-to-business part will make the biggest change first off. But what we do know is that consumers, if they find out things about your company that aren't up to standard and you don't have the information in line to share with them, then they might not choose you. So that can actually become a risky thing, not understanding what your footprint is, because consumers are, as you are well aware, becoming more and more aware as well. So I think maybe they won't choose the green move, paying more money at the first stage, but they will get there, they will follow, and they might choose someone else if you don't have your shit together, sorry my French. But I think that's very important, to be able to be transparent, to be able to do that is actually something that you can use for your business as a competitive advantage as well. And this also means that you will avoid costly surprises. We're not going to go deep into any ESG or sustainability legislations, but I'm sure many of you out here are already at least indirectly affected by the demands that are coming out now, the requirements of how you should not only report your sustainability data, but also improve over time. So if you are not doing this, it's hard to future-proof your business, because this will affect you. Even if it feels like further down the line, we'll take it then. It can become really costly if you don't start in time, because then you have to put all of your resources and efforts into going back in history and getting the data in place. So starting at step 1 now, even if it's not 100% correct, is better than waiting until the law actually applies to your company that you have to abide to. So this goes into that, but increasing efficiency, making it a process within your company, setting those sort of internal processes and knowing which stakeholders to involve, because it is a joint effort within your company. I feel like sometimes we talk to companies at a daily basis, and sustainability is one aspect, as like financial is, as HR is, and like everything your operations is. But it should be the foundation of what you're doing, because that is also how you can improve and save both money and time on making your operations more sustainable. So it's truly important in that sense as well. And this is then how you future-proof your business and can communicate what you're doing. I think this is something that we talk too little about. Within the world of sustainability, we're now talking about greenwashing, that you're scared of sharing what you're doing because you're not sure about, is the information correct, is it enough? But it's really important to share what you're doing to be able to actually get that advantage. Okay, you can choose our company because we are greener than this company. Same price, but greener. Share what you're doing. And with all this in mind, when you have started this process, when you know your baseline, you know what it looks like today, what is your impact today, that's when you can actually start setting goals, because it's very common, and I see it daily, that you set goals, you're very ambitious, like 2050, you want to reach this goal, but if you don't know where you're starting from, how are you going to get there? How are you going to set the strategies? So this is also what I want to really highlight and emphasize. This is the first step of doing it. Then we're going to go on the journey together, going forward and then developing our processes, but really taking the time to start, I think, is good. Start with reading the knowledge hub that we created for you. That's a really good first step, actually.
Yeah, so we need to do some due diligence, as we're actually talking about carbon calculations today, making sure that we're all on the same page of what it is that we're going to be talking about when we do the calculations in the calculator. But first off, I'm going to put you on the spot and check how many of you know what carbon calculations is. Hands up. A few. That's amazing.
Come on, Peter.
Come on, Max. I have Max in the back. He's not putting up his hands.
Max is doing emails, so it's okay.
But that's really good, because that means that this is needed. To just make sure that we know what we're talking about going forward. You'll be able to leave this room, head held high, saying, I know what carbon calculations is. I'm going to keep it simple. So carbon calculations is measuring greenhouse gases produced by different and various activities. For your sake, what that means is what we want to do is calculate the CO2 that your company produces through various activities, such as driving company cars or heating up your warehouses or even sending an email. We won't be calculating that part, but knowing that sending an email is actually producing
26
emissions.
grams for one email
Yes.
sent to 100 people with an attachment.
The calculator is not as granular, thank God, but that is carbon calculations, knowing what your activity produces in CO2. That's what we want to do. And how are we knowing what to do with that? Because that's big. Well, we're leaning at the greenhouse gas protocol. So the GHG protocol tells us how to categorize, measure, and tackle these calculations that we're doing. And that's the most sort of recognized way of doing it. So it's a very well sourced. You can trust the calculator being a very good system for doing this. And it's also where the scope terminology comes in. And that's the big things. Scope terminology, we're going to talk scope 1, 2, and 3. And what that gives us is knowing where in your company's activities the emission comes. Is it internal? Is it external? With your suppliers, something you can control, something you can't control. So very interesting. That's where our passion comes in, talking about this. We could do it for hours. We won't do it. We'll keep it simple. We'll do it very hands-on, tangible, but it's a good knowledge to have. Is it scope 1, 2, and 3? Because you will need to know that when we come into the calculator. And that gives us Magali some...
So, me wasn't going to put you on the spot, I will.
Yes. It's that one.
Yeah.
Going back.
Okay, so understanding scopes of emission. If there's one thing that you need to understand to be able to go into carbon accounting, it's scopes of emissions, because that's typical, well, that's the basic knowledge for corporate sustainability. So who can tell me, for a normal moving company that only does moving, what would go into scope 1? Susie. Oh, Susie.
That's why I'm here.
Well done. Okay. Scope 1 emissions. Scope 1 emissions are called direct emissions. It's the emissions of fuel or used in your owned vehicles or your owned facilities. So if you own your trucks, the fuel that you put into those trucks, that would go in under your scope 1. Okay. If you have a generator to power the energy in your warehouse, the fuel or the energy that goes, not the electricity, but the energy that you use for that generator would go under your scope 1. Scope 2, there are pretty images on there to help you what it means. What is scope 2, where do your scope 2 emissions come from? It's indirect emissions coming from your electricity. So from your external electricity provider, the emissions linked to that source of energy would go under your scope 2. Scope 3, that's all the rest. That's the complicated part. That's what every single company and every single industry bites their teeth on. And our industry is not any different. So up to recently, big companies only needed to report on their scope 1 and scope 2. It's easy. It's very easy to find that, until legislators actually realized that scope 1 and scope 2 is peanuts against to the absolute huge bulk of emissions that lie in a company's scope 3. Take Apple, for example. Apple, with all their offices in the US, if you would take only their scope 1 and scope 2, that's nothing compared to everything that goes into creating and building and producing the computers, mining the products, the lithium that goes into the batteries, or upstream, once the user throws away the phone, what happens there? What happens with those emissions? Actually, Apple now, from a legislation point of view, is responsible for measuring and proving that they are working with their suppliers to lower and mitigate the emissions across their entire supply chain. So we're lucky. We are not the shipping industry. We are not the airline industry. We are not the car industry, which need to reinvent themselves completely. And they're very, very late with doing that. We're not. We are a service-based industry. So actually, and that's very, very important to keep things into proportion, especially when some of the bigger players will come and point their fingers at the movers and say, ugh, you've got the trucks and ugh, you're putting boxes on ships and that's very, very bad and very, very black. Well, actually, it's not that bad when you look at it from a complete picture. But we can't look at that complete picture and push back if we don't have the data, because that will come back again and again and again. We can't take data-driven decisions if we don't have the data, which is the reason we launched this project. So to bring this back home, I want to share with you the example of an RMC, a large RMC based in the US with offices in Europe, which I can't name because they were very kind. They shared their 2021 greenhouse gas emissions report with me. It was 2 years ago, I think, to show where their bulk of emissions lie. So easy peasy. Scope 1, Scope 2 is very small. Scope 1, Scope 2, nothing. They've got, so it says this is post-COVID. Everybody works from home, so they don't have any offices anymore. They don't travel that much, so, but their Scope 3 emissions represent 98% of their total emissions. From a European legislation point of view now, they need to report on those emissions, and at one point they will need to prove that they are working with their supply chain to lower those emissions. So who of you has RMC contracts or works with RMCs? Corporate clients? So who has already received an RFP with sustainability-related questions? Okay. Those of you who have not, it will come your way. Every single time we do this presentation, when I ask us about 2/3 say yes, 1/3 says no, and I always tell the third, give it a year, you will receive those questions at one point. Because from those in their Scope 3, 3/4 lie in their household goods operations. Now, just to make that clear, that does not mean that 3/4 of the entire global mobility industry lies with the moving companies. Absolutely not. This is an RMC with a very heavy household goods activity. That's why it's 3/4 of their carbon footprint. Temporary living, they also have some problems that they need to clean up. And then DSPs, Eura, yeah, you're good to go. For the moment, you're not the focal point yet. So this is just really to show you where the urgency comes from. It's not because, well, I am the sustainability, was a carbon girl, carbon queen, depends on who you're talking to, and that I do believe that it's important to save the planet. Actually, we're not here to try and convince you to save the planet. I'm here to try and convince you that this is important for you to save your company, because you don't have a choice. And that is why, thanks to the FIDI board, FIDI has made this one of our key strategic focal points, because it is coming your way. And while the industry is still trying to figure out what the rules of the games are, back to what Lucas said yesterday, no one knows. We have a window of opportunity here, which is closing very, very, very fast. If we manage to lay the rules of the games ourselves to say, okay, this is what sustainability means for the moving company, for the moving industry, for the DSP industry, and this is how we can solve it together up the food chain, meaning the RMCs and the corporate clients will accept it because we live and breathe what we're doing. But the window is closing very, very fast, because in a few years' time, somebody else will have put down the rules for us. This is just to show that this project is actually really important, not only for the penguins and the planet, but also for us as an industry.
Awesome. Yeah. You want to? Should
No,
I?
I just wanted to add something when it comes to Scope 3. I can't help myself. But when we look at it, I think it's important because we, as a company, you are your supply chain. That's what we talk about on a daily basis, because without your suppliers, it's really hard to conduct a business. And I think we talked yesterday about even workwear that you're purchasing for your workers, for your movers. That is part of your supply chain. That has a footprint. You have to calculate what does that mean to be able to change it or maybe choose more sustainable garment. So it's really about focusing on that part, the Scope 3, starting that, because it is the trickiest part. You have to actually ask for data from your suppliers. You have to get it from them, and that can take some time. So again, back to why you should start now. This is really important. And I hope you recognize yourself in that view that your suppliers are pretty much where your business lies on. So if you're not sustainable there, you're not sustainable business.
Yes. And obviously, calculating Scope 1, 2, and 3, it's one part of it, but it's not the big part. So we are supplying, with this project, small piece of the puzzle, helping you to calculate your emissions. But it doesn't start with calculating your emissions, because you need to find the data first. You need to allocate that data within your company, outside your company, to be able to calculate and find that baseline and understand where you are now. So how do you go about setting processes of finding the data in your company, outside of your company? And I was very inspired by Lucas yesterday because he was very much on point, and we've talked about it, cover it a bit so far, on point in saying it's no quick fixes. So we are not doing this. It's not a get it going and tomorrow you have a result. That's not how it works. It's a process, and you need to do some legwork in this place to be able to get a result at the end of the process. So first of all, we need to get some internal buy-in. We need to create understanding. And that's what you're doing today, here, yesterday, listening in, being at this workshop. You're starting to create a buy-in and an engagement for this process, which me and Emma are just mind blown on how far you've come as an industry already. Give yourself a hand of applause, because that's just amazing. But starting there, you're creating engagement, but then you also need to engage internally, externally with your stakeholders. You might not be the one that's going to sit in the calculator, but you're going to have someone in the company that does. You need to support them, make sure that your company is engaging in this process to enable them to get the data they need. And once you get those internal and external engagements, you need to set the processes. And more importantly, you need to find out where you have data and where you don't have data today. Because when you start, you're not going to have all the data. That's fine. Nobody has all the data. But you need to start finding the activity data in your company to also understand where you don't have data. Where do you have gaps? Because that's the process of becoming better. Finding where you have gaps and then starting to work to fill those gaps as you move forward, as you progress. And then potentially, I guess, you will have some data already now, which is good. And that's what you're putting into the calculator. That's how you start calculating that data and getting a result. And based on that result, that's where you can start utilizing that baseline that you have today to become better. Understand, how can I make this process even better going forward the next year? What data don't I have? How do I get that data? So that when you move forward in this journey, you're always taking steps of becoming better, because you're starting to understand, you have a process in place, you're improving that process. I think Lucas said yesterday, phasing up the good practices, phasing out the bad practices. But before you can do that, you also need to understand where you are today before you can take those steps.
I just want to go in there. Who has already done their FAME 2022 audit in here? Okay. I can imagine that you recognize the steps, processes all the time. Well, it's exactly the same thing. It's understand the process, make sure you have the process in place, implement the process, train, get the buy-in. Well, it's exactly the same thing. It just follows the standard FAME process. So there's nothing new here, except that big fat disclaimer: this is not mandatory, and this is not part of the FAME process. Very, very important to just make that. It's not part of the FAME process. I've got the FCC team sitting in the back. I just want to make that very clear. It is not part of the FAME process for the moment.
Yes. Do you want to add something as well?
No, I just wanted to add that I think, like, looking at this, for me, it becomes very clear that the biggest part of the work happens before, like with the audit, like you have to set the processes. And an example of that can be, if you're doing thousands of moves every year, you know how long it's going, you know the distance, you know the weight, structure that, start structuring it so that you have that for when you go into the calculator, because that's the easy part. That's when you just recalculate the actual activity data that you have, the distance traveled, the weight, and so on. So if you start thinking about where is that data kept today and how can I structure it in a way so that it makes sense when I start to calculate my emissions, that is a really good starting point.
And I can already see some blank faces going, oh my God.
Oh yeah, it's an exercise.
Yes, but we are here also to help. So one thing that we are going to work on over the summer, we're going to have a very busy summer just like you guys, we are going to work on data collection templates, which are basically fancy Excel sheets with the columns already pre-filled out as in what needs to go where, and explaining how to find the data, where to find the data, to already make that structurally a bit more easier to understand. So we won't leave you completely alone. Again, similar to the FAME process. You're not alone on this. We're not here to make things more difficult for you, but we can't do all the work for you.
Exactly. And to give you a sneak peek, what will be in those sort of data templates, and also what's in the calculator, what activities can you already start looking at now to find out what data do you have available. So scope 1, as we know, that's our direct emissions that we control, that's within your company. So we have transportation of goods, if you're the owner of the trucks. You have company cars that you're driving, you have energy, air conditioning. But then we have scope 2, which is the electricity that you use. And then we have the big part, which is your indirect emissions that you can't have direct control over, but that is the major part of your company's emissions that you need to take action on. And you have transportation of goods here as well, so know if you have a supplier that drives your goods, that's a scope 3 emission. But you also have business travel, destination service, commuting, waste. We are keeping it simple for this first round. We'll come into the next phases as we move forward, but it doesn't going to contain everything at this stage because we want to make sure that it's manageable and tangible for you to start.
And just to that point, the way we proceeded with this is we got a group of FIDI experts together, and you've got Max sitting right in the back who can go into detail after the session on why we took the decisions that we did. And one of the big discussion points was, in Scope 3, what do we include and what don't we include and why don't we include it? So the big glaring missing point in Scope 3 is packaging material. You will not be able to calculate packaging material at this stage, and I underline at this stage. And the reason for that is that for the moment there is no scientifically credible enough source of emission factors for the main types of packaging material that can be applied globally. Because bubble wrap in Finland might not be the same thing as bubble wrap in Germany, maybe, but in Chile or in South Africa or in Pakistan. So what we want to do over the summer, again, we'll be very busy in summer, we want to work with packaging experts and again, FIDI experts to define together emission factors that are globally applicable and that can be accepted by our industry as relevant so that, again, it makes sense for what we need. So that's, for example, one thing that is missing for the moment. We are working on it. Another one that was a big debate and that is missing for now is emissions linked to home working, for example. It's fairly easy to add, but we decided for the moment not to add it. So it is a work in progress. It will evolve in phases over time. But this was, well, it's this constant balance between ease of use and granularity of the data that we have to find at each step of the way.
Don't worry. Again, the Knowledge Hub. So we've built, I don't know how much time we spent on it, but it's been lots of time spent on putting together, I would say, one of the best knowledge hubs that I've ever seen that's bespoke to your industry, giving you all the information that you need to know to get going. And the main point of this is, I don't know if you feel afraid getting this information, feel like, oh, this is going to be hard. Don't be afraid. We are here to support, FIDI is here to support, Worldfavor is here to support. A good place, as Emma mentioned, start by reading the Knowledge Hub. That will get you on your way and creating some understanding. But with that said, I think the most exciting part about today is to go in and actually show you what we have been working on and give you that sneak peek. We are live. You can sign up already now to get access to it. Some of you have, some of you don't. After today, I think everybody will sign up.
I expect you to.
Yeah. So,
and just before you get on, so access is free of charge for all FIDI members. And we are working with our Euro partners who have very graciously said that they would like to join our project. So we will be working over the summer again to make the platform available also for pure DSP companies, because as me will show you now, we already cover DSP services in our calculator because so many of FIDI members also do DSP.
yes. So I'm expecting woos and woos when we go into it. So if I can get a sort of, how's that working? Exactly. Are you ready? Woo, there we go. Okay, so not as exciting, but it's a video. So I'm going to try and keep up video as we go through the platform. But I do want to say that we are sitting outside. We have our computers with you. You have access to the platform. If you want to click around, see more, come talk to us, and we'll show you in real life as we go through. But this is what you get when you sign up to Worldfavor. This is the free account that you get access to in the Worldfavor platform, where you can collect data, store it, report it to FIDI, or utilize it for your own data storing needs to report outside the platform if you need to as well. And I'm gonna gear up to talk fast as I press play, so we'll get through this. But with this account, you can invite more colleagues. And what you need to know is that the VIP calculator that we have developed for your industry is down in a FIDI questionnaire that's been sent to you when you log in. And to start responding and get access to the calculator, you press respond, and you get into the questionnaires where you can collect data. You can also choose language to change it to a language you want to report on. And then if you scroll down, you'll see where you can input data to start collecting your scope emissions per activity and category. And this is also where you'll be able to find links to the Knowledge Hub, but also to the calculator to go in and start calculating your emissions. So if we go into the calculator, you'll get access to the bespoke, very good calculator we built for you. You'll also have access to the Knowledge Hub from here. And here's where you start choosing within the scope, what are you calculating today? So if we go into scope 1 and start calculating transportation of goods, for example, you'll start seeing that you have Knowledge Hub links again everywhere to help you understand what you're doing. But when you're ready, you filter on the data points. You have access to metric, imperial, USA, UK metrics to guide you on what you want to calculate per your country's metric system. And then you start filling in your activity data that you have collected by setting internal processes to get it actual. And you'll see that you get the CO2 per activity to your left, but also to the right, you have the summary of the total emission for that category based on what you put in. So you'll get the total in kilos and also in tons. You also have access to some intensity measures to help you compare it over time, to help you start improving and seeing how it's affecting your business. And you can also see how the emissions is distributed within your activity data. So what of the activity that you put in is giving you the most emissions, to start understanding how can you improve in your company based on the activity that you have available. And you can also download this as a CSV to save it, store it, to see what you have in place. When you need to continue to work, you just upload the same file to have all the data in one place and build on your calculations processes. And that's it. Easy, huh? Right? Okay, good. Handing over.
Before we go to the works, again, I'm here to keep expectations realistic. Can I just quickly go through what this is not? As in,
Yes.
it says it's a carbon calculator, so it actually does what the name says. It's a calculator. It's very important to make the difference between calculation, reporting, and estimation. Okay, this is not the full tool yet. Okay, so when you use a calculator on your phone, when you put stuff in your calculator, the calculator doesn't know what you're putting in or why you're calculating it. So you can calculate whatever you want in this calculator. You can calculate your yearly emissions, your emissions by activity, your future emissions, your home emissions, whatever you want. The calculator doesn't know that. That is why it doesn't store the data when you are putting it into the calculator. That's where the reporting side comes in. So we have a reporting questionnaire by FIDI, which is not mandatory, but you will get emails from me asking you to do it for your sake and for my sake. Because for FIDI, it helps gain industry insights, and we're applying the same philosophy that we do with the financial assessment. No one outside of me and Emma get to see your company-specific data, but we will use that data for industry insights. Okay, so it's really, really important that you do fill in the 2023 emissions report. It will also help you structure your report that you can then use for your clients or whoever is asking for it. But it's not the same thing. You've got the calculator, you've got the reporting tool. Very important. Another thing that this tool does not do is check the validity of the data. You are responsible for the credibility, the validity of the data. Yet, if our membership says that it is something that is really, really important, that FIDI validates the credibility of your data, from a technical point, it's very easy to do. We can do that. For the moment, it's not included. If your client asks for verified data, you will need to find an auditor to check the data. We can provide access to that auditor to the methodology, no problem there, but we don't provide the validation of the data. Very, very important. And I had a third point, which was, oh yes, the actual reporting side of things. For the moment, that's not your perfect solution, because it has a very, very rudimentary reporting side to it. That's another thing we are going to work on, maybe not in the summer, because you might have noticed we'll be very busy in the summer, but we are going to work on a very, very simplified carbon footprint report for your company. Very simplified. But then again, we don't know what all of your clients want, so it's up to you to see how you use the results from the calculation platform. You are responsible for your reporting for now. Okay, that's it.
Yes. Yes.
No, you got that.
Yeah, sorry. Maybe you replied to the question already, but it's a technical question. Are the values given from tank to wheel or from well to wheel? You know, there is two ways of calculating the emissions, and some customers are sensitive regarding this issue, and I don't know what's more relevant to calculate from well to wheel or from tank to wheel.
Before I let Emma get in, we said at the beginning, carbon accounting is not an exact science, and you will have pros and cons and arguments against absolutely everything you say. So again, this is not perfect, but what we use is the DEFRA. We use DEFRA as the main source for the emission factors, and we will continue fine-tuning the exactness of the results. What is important in this project is that we have a common baseline. Okay, so that's just to keep things, again, keeping expectations realistic.
Exactly. No, and I think that's a valid question, and the reason why we at Worldfavor have also been using DEFRA open source for 10 years now, which is because it is transparent, it's government funded, it is really the scientific facts behind it, and we have all the information that you need to be transparent of what emission factors you are utilizing and what the methodology behind it is. So that you can share, and I think it's also, as Magali said, the data you put in, the validity of the data is as good as the data you put in. So you have to know that the activity is correct or not. But within the calculator, you can also choose to do estimates. So when you download it, you will also separate it. So if you don't have the exact number, you can do actuals or estimates. So you can always share that type of information.
But to your questions, without being 100% sure, because Max, you will need to remind me what we decided on at the end. I think it's wheel to tank, but I wouldn't put my hand in the fire just yet, because I have to admit that right now, I can't remember after having looked at that Excel sheet for hours and hours and weeks. I will get back to you on that one, Morgan.
And I would also say it will change over time. I mean, this is where we are right now. And this is what we feel very comfortable with sharing with you guys, so that you can feel secure that you have a good source to be able to do your calculations. All right, good. So just to summarize here before we go into more questions, I just wanted to remind you that, of course, this is free for all FIDI members to use the reporting account, where you then access the Knowledge Hub and the CO2 calculator. So you never have to pay anything. You can get access right now if you haven't already gone in. And as Mi said, we will be here. Our cards are put out all over, so you can book meetings with us if you need support as well. But what I wanted to point out as well is that what I mentioned in the beginning, that for your needs of maybe managing large supply chains, this is something that can be brought in as an add-on. What that means in practice is that you could have your own account where you invite your suppliers and you ask them for the data you need to be able to do your Scope 3 emissions. If you have 10 suppliers, maybe even 50 suppliers, it might not be that challenging, but if you have 100 or more, or thousands even, that can be the case, then you might need to manage that data collection progress somehow. And then you can also talk to us and we can set it up. And the good thing about it is that the synergies is that the companies are already in the platform. So probably you are sharing suppliers and business partners across this fantastic industry. So then they can reshare the data that they have already reported to you. So that is what we are right now, but looking ahead, next phase is plan. We talked about it a little bit.
Yeah. You might have realized we have a very busy summer ahead of us. So the very, very first step we want to work on is, first of all, get feedback from the users to see where we need to fine-tune the actual tool. So thank you for those that have already sent it through. For the others, once you do it, the feedback process is actually really, really, really important because we are in this very first phase. One thing we are going to work on is packaging material emission factors. That's #1 priority. The second priority, I would say, is the reporting side of things, is to allow you to be able to pull a very simple carbon footprint report for your company for the full year of 2023, starting with 2023. And then we have our project with the partnership with Eura, where we want to fine-tune and customize the DSP side of things for Eura members as well. And within the Coalition for Greener Mobility, I have to say I am slightly overwhelmed by the enthusiasm and the expectations we've created with this project. We have so many industry stakeholders coming to us saying, we want to be part of this, how can we make it bigger, how can we include other sectors, that I have to admit that it is slightly overwhelming, but we need to figure out how we can do that, keeping expectations realistic and myself alive. So that's what we are working on. So that's the immediate priorities. In the long run, to your point, Susie, I think it was again, for the moment, we are only focusing on carbon footprint, as in the environmental side of ESG, but the Worldfavor platform allows for full ESG reporting. So you can find social items, issues in there, governance items and issues. So that's going to be the logical next step, is to say, okay, so now that we've figured out the environmental side, more or less, we will start looking at the S and the G of this whole sustainability issue, where we will work together with, for example, RMC partners or and the corporates to see from a social aspect what and the sustainability reporting point of view, what are the elements that they need to be able to make sense of this whole very, very complex but also fascinating topic. Yes.
And time is up. So.
Yes. So we have
questions.
We have time. Well, we have 10-minute time for questions. So please go ahead.
Yes. So as you can see here, the QR code, just to clarify what that gives you, it gives you the link to the login page on the Worldfavor platform. So if you haven't logged in yet, feel free, or come by later on. We can do it together and help you out.
Yeah, me and Emma have a table in the left-hand corner of the networking lounge, so you can feel free to go and join. Any questions? The microphone would be easier. Thanks, Baz.
Hello, I just have a quick question. We are eventually also planning to achieve the EcoVadis certification. How would that tool or that implementation of the system help me to actually achieve EcoVadis? So I think, or I would think that would be a good help for me to do that, right?
Mm-hmm. So within the Coalition for Greener Mobility, so we are 6 associations representing the main sectors, as we like to think, the main sectors of global mobility. So we have got DSP, corporate housing, the moving side, and the WERC side for the corporate world. And one thing that we are trying to, or the priorities that were identified as to what we as an industry need to figure out together is first carbon measurement. We're working on that one. The next one is certification, because from an RFP point of view, I have heard companies that are doing 5 certifications at once. CDP, EcoVadis, SBTi, UN Global Compact, and I can't remember the acronym of the 5th one. They have one person, that's staying with their ESG manager, that does only that. And he said, Magali, I spend my entire year only reporting, meaning that I can't actually do what I'm promising to do, as in making our company and the supply chain better, which is ridiculous. But there we need to work together with where the questions and the requirements actually come from, so that we can actually say, okay, can we please just agree on one certification, or can we agree on checkboxes that if a supplier checks all of those boxes, they don't need to do all of the other requirements? But that's at industry level. I can't decide that. FIDI can't decide that. So I would say EcoVadis, just like FAME, is as good as you make it for your company. It's an audit process. You can either just decide to just use it as a tick box exercise and have a fancy certificate, great for you, but you can also use it to actually improve your company's processes. My advice, especially for the smaller companies, would be if no one has asked you to do EcoVadis, don't do it. If a client has asked you to do it, use it to improve all your processes, because basically the questions or what you need to provide and the process that you need to have implemented are more or less similar across the board-ish. So yes, this one will help you because you will have covered a small part of the EcoVadis very, very, very long list of requirements, but it won't solve all of your issues.
Yeah, my question is also related to certification, because now we have some accounts that require the CO2 emissions to be certified by an independent organization. So would you be able to offer some kind of assistance? Would you be able to certify the result?
So I would be interested in having more information about that, what they actually mean with certifying your carbon emissions. I can imagine that it has to do with auditing the validity of the data that is put in. So that's back to what I said at the beginning. For the moment, the tool does not allow that. From a technical point, it's very, very easy to do. We can't make it mandatory because that's a membership. The membership has to push for that to become mandatory. We can't decide that. From a technical point of view, it's very easy to do. For the moment, we don't provide that, but if we get enough push from our members, we can definitely do that rather easily. Any other questions? Wait, Mike.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you, first of all, because I've started this about a year ago, and everyone on the stage has been our biggest supporter of information and direction. Because if you're sitting here right now and you're wondering, that's a lot of information, why, when, how, who, all of that, I was in the same place. And what I can say is this is not just meant for our customers that are saying, meet a compliance factor. It's meant for our employees and our communities. And you're not meant to get to net zero tomorrow. It's a starting point. And this is an excellent part of starting point, is saying, where are we at as a company now? And how do we get 1% better tomorrow? So you're not being asked, because the first thing, when we propose this to our management is, how much is it going to cost? That's not what this is. This is saying, how do we measure our foundation and how do we move forward from there? And 3 people on the stage are the best. They truly are, and they've been super supportive of getting us where we're at today. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
So my motto in life, and especially in this project, has always been an imperfect something is better than a perfect nothing. So this is our imperfect something. We are going to work on making it a little bit less imperfect, but it's the same thing for you. You have to start somewhere. So you might as well dive in and start with a very, very imperfect something, because that will allow you then to make it almost as perfect as possible something in time.
Amen to that.
Amen, exactly. So.
No more questions. So again, thank you very much for giving us the chance to be part of this such an important milestone in our industry. It must be it's a short, small group, but I'm sure that year by year the group is going to continue growing, and the evolution of the process is going to keep going, developing. So amazing presentation. Thank you for everything what we have learned, and looking forward to see next convention the evolutions and all the work that you did after that summer. That is going to be so easy.
No
Big
pressure.
round of applause for this amazing presentation.
And if Jesse asks, we had 152 people sitting in the room.
This is the 30%, right? Leading the way.
Right.
This is, you're in the forefront now. We expect you to do it.
Reach out if there's more questions, but otherwise come see us outside. Thank you.
you.